Hello and welcome to the Creators Guild podcast. I'm Chris Howell and with me,
Jared Lovelady.
and we're here today to talk about all things creative. And as always, once again, we're still reading Flight from Shadows, book one in our Chronicles of Duradim series. And if you haven't gotten it, this is your reminder once again. Go get your copy and check it out and leave us a review and to send us a message and let us know what you think. We read chapter 15 last time, had a good discussion with Liz Verity. Hopefully you enjoyed that chapter. I know that we've gotten some various levels of feedback
Just a little bit.
on that one. So today we are, after that fun little incident, we're on to chapter 16. Okay. Chapter 16, The Confrontation. Cycle of Aelith, year 12-182. Looking back, it is amazing to me how quickly I learned to love someone whom I was initially wary of, and learned to despise someone whom I initially held in high regard. Journal of a Thondrakoviat, 5th day of the cycle of Aeson, 12-183. A messenger woman in the colors of House Umari carried sheaves of parchment. She had just closed the door to the Baron's stateroom as Tawara approached. The woman bowed slightly and addressed her. "I'm sorry, my lady, but Corvin is in the middle—" "I do not care, Galith," she said, pushing past the woman, throwing open the heavy door. She put her full weight behind it and was disappointed in how slowly the door swung inward. Curse high elf builders and their damned exceptional quality. She was more pleased with Corvin's reaction. "Tawara, what is the meaning of this? I gave explicit instructions that I was not to be disturbed, and you fail to even announce your presence before entering?" The Premier stood behind the vine-covered desk, having arisen with the sudden intrusion. A semicircle of chairs faced the desk, filled with faces Tawara recognized from the Tradoc City Council and 2 local regents from within the province. All eyes were on her as she entered the room. Rage flared inside her as her eyes fell on Corvin. "I will see you arrested for murder," she declared, pointing an accusing finger at Corvin as she stalked into the room, ignoring the stunned faces that watched her. "Tawara, this is an emergency meeting to discuss a sensitive topic. I have no time for your nonsense," Corvin began, but Tawara startled him again by cutting him off. "You will make time for me." She seethed inside, and she let her rage show. "You will hear me now. Your actions cannot go unnoticed this time." She turned to the officials in the room. "You are each in a position of authority in Tradoc. Are you aware already of the crimes of the Premier?" Their faces held blank expressions as she looked around the room. "Are you aware that my father has governed Avalonia as its Baron for over 200 years?" Tawara continued, her words dripping with disdain. "In all that time, not once has he had to resort to a public execution, and now Corvin, the pretend Baron, has done so on a whim. He had children burned alive in the market square. Children!" Her voice rose nearly to shouting and she was pointing in the direction of the square. "That is quite enough, Tawara," Corvin demanded, slapping the palm of his hand down on the desk. "We are in an official meeting, and you are out of order. If you are charging me with murder, then show me an official writ, with the charges clearly spelled out. Bring the captain of the guard, with a warrant to arrest me. If you do not have such a writ, then you will wait, and we will address this at a later time." Tawara paused, still angry, but now her face flushed with embarrassment as well. "No, I do not have a writ. I came straight here after witnessing the crime," she said, her voice much calmer than she felt. "That is not how the law works. There are laws that govern making such accusations. Making any such claim out of frustration or emotion is both dangerous and juvenile. You will learn this if you are ever to be ready to wear a crown of the realm." His voice took on a slightly calmer tone. "We can all see that you are upset. You must learn to keep your emotions in check. Now, if you will please compose yourself, I am sure our guests of state will accept your apology for this rude interruption and poorly veiled accusations against them. You may then leave us, and we will discuss this matter when you have had sufficient time to recover your faculties." "And what of the other 2?" Tawara demanded. "Where are Fram and Meg?" "As I have said, I will not discuss this with you now. You will leave this meeting, and you will wait until I send for you. Or you can stand there and pout, and you will be ignored. Either way, this meeting will continue uninterrupted." Tawara dropped her eyes, unable to bring herself to look at Corvin. She knew she would lose what little composure she had regained. Yet she also knew he was right. Corvin could not be brought down with emotional outbursts. She had to be reasoned and consider her words and actions carefully. It had been a rash, emotion-driven response to come here. "You are right, Premier," she said, bowing in his direction, although it pained her to do so. "I apologize for my outburst," she said to the seated group. "Forgive my intrusion and my rudeness. As the Premier has said, I do have much to learn." Heads nodded in her direction. She saw no compassion, but at least some understanding showed in a few eyes. She nodded her head in the direction of the group and turned again to Corvin, still keeping her eyes averted. "By your leave, Premier," she said in a forced tone of humility. "You may go, Tawara," was his simple reply. As she turned and walked slowly from the room, she could feel Corvin's eyes on her, like daggers boring into her back. In the hallway, Athondra stood waiting, her hands clasped in front of her, her face painted with compassion. Tawara paused and waited for the heavy door to close behind her. With a sigh, she leaned her back against the frame of the door, staring at the hallway's decorative ceiling. "That was a mistake," she said, feeling deflated. "My little outburst likely removed any credibility or influence I may have had in holding Corvin accountable." "My lady," Athondra began, her voice hesitant, "what happened in the market was horrendous. What crime could those youths have committed to suffer such a fate? Not to mention the insult to Trekkan beliefs. Their souls will never reach the afterlife now." "They were my friends," Tawara said flatly, still staring at the ceiling. "That was their crime. Corvin killed them because they were my friends. He had them the entire month. Who knows what tortures he put them through? He waited until he knew I would be in the square to make sure I would see. That's what Lieutenant Bernard was waiting for. I am sure his orders were to wait for me to be in the market." "But, my lady, how could he do that? How could such an act be justified? I'm sure there must be some mistake. I cannot understand how the Premier could do such a thing." Tawara felt anger rise. Athondra had been here a single day. What did she know of what Corvin could or could not do? She stood, her eyes shooting daggers at Athondra. "No, Athondra, you do not understand," she said coldly. "You have not been here long enough to have discovered the monster that is Corvin. If you are lucky, you never will. After all, you have him to thank for being here, do you not?" Tawara turned without waiting for a response and stalked down the hallway. The sun was bright overhead as she exited the plain slat-wood servants' door at the back of the manor house. Her destination sat just beyond the barracks, a moderate two-story stone building with a high fence on one side and thick iron bars covering all of the first-story windows. It was the manor's private jail. If Corvin would not answer her, perhaps she would find out where her friends were from the provincial jailer. To think, this entire month, her friends had been here, just across the manicured lawn. She knew they had been questioned, but had thought they'd been returned to the Trekkan camp. When she inquired of them, she was assured that they had been dealt with, and she need not worry. She was stupid to have assumed any positive outcome from Corvin and his lackeys. She felt her eyes burn, and quickly wiped away tears before they could roll down her cheeks. Behind the jail, another much larger building stood. It, too, had its many windows covered with bars. This was the detention center for military prisoners, designed to hold up to an entire company of captured soldiers. She doubted Fram or Meg would be kept there. Knowing Corvin, and seeing the brutal treatment of Jeffrem and Traylon, they would likely be held below the jail, in the lower dungeon, an area reserved for political prisoners who needed special treatment. "My lady," came Athondra's voice from behind, as she neared the entrance to the jail, "may I ask where we are going?" "You may ask anything you like," Tawara replied, not caring to answer the other woman. "My lady, you appear to be going to the manor jail. Is that wise?" Tawara stopped and turned to confront her handmaid. It felt right somehow to be looking down at her. "You may ask, but I have no obligation to answer you. As to any actions I take, I will decide whether there is wisdom in them or not. I do not need you to second-guess me, nor to persuade me, nor to presume to know my motivations. Follow me about if you like, spy on me if you choose, but know that I will not simply tell you every thought I have, nor the reasons for my decisions." The brief look that passed over Athondra's face was that of annoyance. It was quickly replaced by concern, but Tawara had seen it there. She wanted to slap the mask right off the little Wooder's face. Before Athondra could speak, Tawara turned and stomped up the steps to the jail's entrance. She made no announcement. Instead, she simply opened the door and stormed in. The door swinging inward to bang against the wall was much more satisfying than what had happened in the stateroom. A clerk sitting behind a tall desk jumped at the sound, cursing as she stood, holding up a piece of parchment. A dark smudge bloomed across the page where her pen had slipped when Tawara burst in. "By the gods!" she blurted before her eyes fell on Tawara. "Oh, Princess," she said, moderating her tone somewhat. "My apologies. To what do we owe the pleasure?" "I need to see the jailer," Tawara demanded, striding up to face the clerk. Annoyance blossomed within her, adding to the banquet of emotions she was already experiencing. Of course they would have the clerk on a raised platform behind the desk, forcing Tawara to crane her neck to meet the other woman's eyes. "I am here, Princess," came a voice from Tawara's left. "How may I be of service?" Tawara turned to see an old but stately gentleman standing in the doorway that led to the provincial jailer's office. He was impeccably dressed in a burgundy jacket with a high collar and embroidery that marched from the cuffs to just below the elbow. A bit of lace fell around each hand, which he held clasped casually in front of him. He might have looked out of place given his attire, but his manner gave the impression that he knew precisely what he was about. "Jailer Maris," Tawara said as she turned and strode toward him, "I wish to see the Trekkan youths you hold in the cells." Maris's face took on a puzzled look. "Trekkan youths?" he inquired. "I am afraid we have no Trekkan in any of our cells. There were 2 here this morning, of course, but they were released to Lieutenant Bernard. Perhaps if you see him out, he can advise you?" Rage flared within Tawara at the mention of Bernard's name. She fought to keep it from entering her reply. "I do not mean the 2 from this morning. Rather, I am referring to the younger 2 who have been kept here. The 4 were brought in together, but only 2 were, dealt with by Bernard this morning." "Ah, yes," Maris replied, tapping his chin with a long, thin finger. "Please come with me, my lady." He turned and walked through the door. Tawara shouted him through the doorway, anxious for answers. The room was large, with a sturdy, handsome desk and clean shelves with neatly aligned books. Multiple lamps lit the room, softening the effect of the stark walls. A stack of parchment, a closed leather book, a pen and ink jar with blotter were precisely arranged on the desk. "Please," Maris said, indicating a set of chairs in front of his desk. "I would answer you directly, but I wish to consult my ledger first." "Thank you," Tawara replied, "but I prefer to stand. I do not intend to be here long." "As you wish," he replied cordially, before moving behind the desk to retrieve a book from the shelf. It was the same as all the others, and Tawara realized they must all be ledgers. It made the room feel even more sparse than it appeared. Maris returned to the desk, moving the book from its position at the center and placing it near the stack of parchments. He shifted it slightly before nodding to himself, then sitting with the ledger in front of him. Tawara felt like tapping her foot as she watched him slowly flip through each page. Maybe she should have sat. It would feel less awkward. But she had said she would stand, and she would remain so. "Ah, here we are," Maris said, after what seemed an eternity, though he had only scanned a few pages. "As I thought, we had 4 Trekkan youths brought in for questioning. 2 remained for over a month's time, while 2 were delivered to Vilnor, the traveling warden, and to be taken west." "What?" Tawara demanded, stepping forward to look at the ledger. "Show me." "It is here, my lady." The page was lined with neat rows and precise handwriting. Maris pointed to 2 rows as he spoke. "On the 12th day of the cycle of Aelith, we received 4 Trekkan. 2 were siblings, a boy, Fram Arstrand, and his sister, Megrith Arstrand, or Meg as you have called her." He slid his finger across the row. "They were both released into the custody of Warden Vilnor on the 2nd day of the cycle of Petnala." Tawara bit her lip in frustration. "Released to be taken where? You said taken west, but where were they going?" "I'm sorry, my lady," Maris replied with a sigh. "I was given an order to release them to Warden Vilnor. I only know they were taken west because that is the direction he was traveling at the time they were released into his custody." "And there is nothing else?" Tawara demanded. "Nothing noting why they were held, or why they were not released back to their people?" Maris stood slowly, closing the book as he shook his head. "I am afraid I have no answers for you, my lady. I keep precise and detailed records of all transactions in and out, but I am afraid I keep no records associated with changes, sentences, or the particulars concerning prisoners' transfers. I can tell you what the youths were fed at each meal, but I fear that would be of no use to you." He trailed off, giving her a sad smile. Frustration boiled inside her, and she clenched her fists, letting out a slow breath before speaking. "Thank you for your time, Master Maris. I will find out what I can from the Premier. I am sure he is aware of where they were sent." "I am sure you are correct, my lady. If I may offer a suggestion, Captain Ithrin might be a source of information as well. He usually keeps himself well informed of all goings on, and if you need any other records from me, I will be happy to provide you with any information I can." "Indeed," Tor replied, wondering just how much Ethrin really did know, and whether he would tell her. "Thank you again." She turned, offering Ethondra a quick glare before striding from the jailer's office. She needed to be alone and think about what to do next. Ethrin had been to the market when she had arrived. He would have seen Traylon and Jephram being strung up on the poles. Did he try to stop it from happening? Could he have stopped it? And would he have any information about Meg and Fram? Were the brother and sister still alive? Had they been beaten or bloodied the way Traylon and Jephram had been? She pictured the four of them in the lower dungeon. She had been there many years ago and had never returned, but she still had vivid memories of the visit. Maris had been the jailer then, too, and had escorted her below the jail. He was meticulous in his work and kept the lower dungeons as clean as the manor house, yet even with the cleanliness, the cloying smell seemed to seep out of the very walls. The entire dungeon was dark and close, with a claustrophobically low ceiling and narrow passageways. There were multiple rooms whose walls were lined with instruments of interrogation. She remembered the near panic she felt when they approached the four solid doors sunk into the stone floor at the farthest end of the dungeon that covered the oubliettes. There had been a conflict with the province to the north, and a few political enemies had been brought here. She only saw one of them in his dark cell. Like the dungeon itself, he looked clean. Despite this, he appeared to have been forgotten by the world. When Tawara had asked Maris about him, he had replied then, as he did during this visit. He knew nothing of why the prisoners were kept here, only that they were to be held. When the orders came for them to be transferred or released, he would see it done. But this oversight extended no further than their daily care. When Tawara had asked how long the man might stay there, Maris had replied that he didn't know the reason for his confinement, but based on the cell he had been placed in, he would never be allowed visitors, and he would likely never see the light of day. Tawara shivered as she remembered. She was not sure whether it was better for Fram and Meg to have been transferred from that dark hell or not. She shook herself as she realized she had reached the door to her antechamber. She had come here unconsciously, knowing it was the one place she could be alone. She opened the door and walked through, and was startled to find Ethondra at her heels. She had forgotten the other woman completely. Annoyance flared in her as Ethondra attempted to follow Tawara into her chambers. This was quickly replaced by satisfaction when Tawara shut the door in the stunned Woodard's face. She passed through the antechamber and into her bedroom, pulling a sheet of parchment from a drawer and preparing her pen and inkwell. A list of Corvin's crimes, anything she could think of, would go on the parchment. She would take it to Captain Ethrin and convince him to draw up an official writ and sign a warrant for Corvin's arrest. She could feel the satisfaction already, as she imagined watching the pompous premier being escorted to the very cells in which he had kept her friends. But as she brought the pen to the parchment, it hovered there, waiting patiently for her hand to direct it. She stared at the nib, watching as its patience waned and a drop of ink slowly grew, then fell onto the blank page. As she stared, the images of the morning events flashed through her mind. The desktop with its parchment and ink blurred, and she felt herself shaking. Soon additional spots appeared on the page as she filled the blank sheet with tears rather than ink. An overwhelming sense of grief and rage seized her when she swung her arms across the desktop, flinging the contents across the room and sending a spray of ink across the tile and ornate Outlander carpet. She stood and threw herself onto her bed, sobbing into the soft comforter. She lay there weeping until the unconsciousness of sleep overtook her. And that is the end of chapter 17.
16.
16. Sorry, I looked at chapter 17 as I closed the book. So chapter 17. It's the next one. So started on that pathway of Tawara not being very happy with what has happened to her friends. This chapter was actually combined with the previous chapter, wasn't it? Or was it combined? It was combined with something.
I don't remember.
Maybe it was just shorter.
It was shorter. I know we definitely.
Oh no, I think it was combined with it was combined with chapter.
What is chapter 17?
Let's see. You'd think we know all this. Yeah. Chapter 17, wretched jurisprudence.
Yeah.
So chapter 17 was too long, and these were combined together, and they both needed a little bit of tweaking. I remember that now. Yeah, we split chapter 16 out of 17 and added like our first version, Jailer Maris, didn't exist. The jailhouse didn't exist. We didn't have any of that extra.
No, yeah, okay, I remember now. Or well, I remember partially anyway.
Yeah. Well, we needed to know we needed to have a definitive direction for Jephram or for Meg and Fram. So after
Well,
reviewing,
originally we killed them all.
yes, originally there were 4 polls. I don't remember if we mentioned that in the last episode with Liz.
I don't remember.
So yeah, there are 2 polls. There were 2 polls in there now, and unfortunate for them, Fram and Jephram didn't survive.
Then we had an idea.
Or Meg. What am I saying?
I don't know.
Traylon and Jephram. Traylon and Jephram didn't make it through chapter 15. But yes, go ahead.
Well, we had an idea for one of the other 2. I don't want to give any spoilers, and that prompted us to need a reason for them to survive, and that's kind of where this came from.
Yeah. Yeah, so you can pick up on those hints that that perhaps those stories are not completely told, but either way, they have been taken. Meg and Fram, the twins, taken to the west. So, yeah, we added that in, and you can see Tuara's not a big fan of Athandra at the moment. You know, they didn't quite.
No, they're not hitting it off. Yeah.
Yeah. So, more to come on multiple fronts of things that happened in chapter 16. Yeah, with a lot of characters mentioned in or brought up in chapter.
We've brought up a lot of characters just in general that it's it's threads that will be weaved as the story is told.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I mean everybody in this. Well, there's the clerk and the messenger that are there that they may come. There's some chances that they may have some things, but everybody else.
It's a thread in the tapestry.
Yeah, they're all going to get more weaving and direction throughout book 1, and a lot of other stuff going on in the future. So still a lot of writing to get all those threads. I mean, there's only going to be another, what's about 200,000 times 10, so another 2 million words or so.
Yeah.
And we'll weave all these threads together.
Something like that.
So we'll get there. Hopefully you come along for the ride and enjoy it. So shifting gears here a little bit, we've tried to come up with something a little bit different that we wanted to do today. Today we have an interview. The interview is actually, we asked AI to ask us some questions as though it were interviewing us. It's not a voice AI, so we just typed it in and now we are going to be interviewed. So kind of an interesting take on things, and these are new questions. We haven't reviewed them. We've just reviewed the topic a little bit that AI came up with to discuss or to interview us about. And the topic is the art of procrastination, turning delays into creative masterpieces.
It'll be a hard one because we don't really procrastinate in our
No.
We're very much plotting and
No, well, there's a difference though. Well, is there a difference though between we're plotting and kind of planning what we want to do? But then when it comes to execution,
yeah, but with us, I don't think it's so much procrastination as it is time constraint.
yeah, yes, there's definitely that.
Although
Yeah,
we did procrastinate about signing up for that con we're coming up to.
yeah, yeah. Extreme Con coming up at the end of September. We were late. We kind of procrastinated signing up for that, and now we're even with our limited time trying to come up with how our booth is going to look and whatnot. But hey, we'll make it work out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think with the book, a lot of stuff is not with doing this. A lot of stuff is not procrastination. The same thing, even starting this podcast. We talked about starting the podcast a year, literally an entire, almost a year to the day,
Yeah.
before we actually recorded our first episode. But it wasn't really procrastination. We got all the pieces and got stuff together, but
But then we got into the end of writing and editing
yeah,
and you know
yeah,
publishing and
my days consist of I get up at 4 in the morning, I go to the gym before work, then I go to work and I'm at work around I'm physically in the building about, you know, 9.5 to 10.5 hours a day, depending on what's going on. And then I leave work and 2 nights a week I do plasma and blood stuff. And then I have kids that have swimming and band and football games. And then we work on podcast recording and book editing a couple of nights a week. Saturdays, we both work the farmer's market we're at the farmer's market by 6 o'clock Saturday morning, and we are there till around 1. And then we do more book editing or work with podcast stuff or with people from the Writers Guild. And then Sunday is I go to church, and then I usually have like some other meetings and try to hang out with my kids for a little
yeah.
bit. And that's my week. It's like 18-hour days, 6 days a week.
Yeah. Mine's not quite as constrained, but I work.
But you get up at 4 every morning and work
Yeah.
as well. And then I got to show up here.
Yeah. So yeah.
The difference between me and you is I get up and I try to go to the gym before going to work, and you don't go to the gym before going to work. And that's it.
Yeah. And that's because I go to work at 4 o'clock. Well,
You leave
I leave
at
it
4 and I leave a little later. So, well, that's stuff right now. But historically, have we ever procrastinated on anything?
No,
Jared?
never.
No, nobody. So Jared and I were both missionaries, went to different places. When I was a missionary, we had so there's a mission president, and then the mission president has 2 assistants. And at one point in my mission, I had to call the assistants to the president every night and report information to them on like how other missionaries were doing and stuff like that. And there was a missionary who, Elder Namdi Na, is from Nigeria. And he grew up in like a very strict regimented house.
Mm-hmm.
And you could tell like everything about him was always like neat and pressed and organized, and very detailed note taker, very organized. And when I'd call him, or well, a lot of times he'd have to call me, be like, it is in his Nigerian accent, Elder Howard. Elder Howard, how are you doing today? So, what do you have to tell me today, Elder Howard? And I'd be like, well, I don't have any. He'd be like, Elder Howard, I call you every day. And every day you do not have the numbers and the information ready for me, and so I must wait on the phone. I'm like, yes, Elder Na, that's correct. And then one of the days he said, now I'm getting him some information, and he's like, you know, Elder Howard, something that I have learned is if it wasn't for the last minute, many things would never be done.
That's a great quote, actually.
I know. I was like, this is the wisest person ever. So, yeah, very good guy, but also very, I could hear it in his voice. Like, you're supposed to be ready when I call. It was like, he would call at like 10 o'clock every night, like on the dot. Like, you know that I call every night at this time. He wouldn't like, he would be more diplomatic about it. Be like, Elder Howard, I'm calling again at the same time tonight that I called you last night. How are things? And you're like, well, I still don't have it ready for you. I could hear him. So, Elder Na nailed it. If it weren't for the last minute, many things would never be done. So, some of the questions in here. Do you have any funny or memorable stories about a time when procrastination led to a creative breakthrough?
Hmm.
I know in college, uh, so what we're doing for writing these stories, plotting it all out and outlining it, and then writing to the outline, never did that. I've taken creative writing classes, engineering writing classes, communication classes, public speaking classes, even like writing papers for, business analytics and what the heck were you review doing an analysis of how businesses do their work. I didn't outline anything.
I'm not an outliner at all. In regular, beyond the book,
Yeah,
I'm not an outliner. I don't. I'm very much by the seat of my pants.
yeah. Well, not only that, but like I would turn in papers. So I'd turn in like when I was taking business classes, and we'd have to write a paper a week, and I would turn in a 15-page paper every week, and like we had minimums that we had to turn in with references and stuff, and I would put the references together because we had to have that case study. That's what I was trying to think of. I'd do the case study, and then I'd be like, okay, well, this paper needs to be written, and then I would just sit down and be like, type, 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 type. It's hilarious. There is a video that I wonder if we could pull it up and share it.
I don't know how.
We'll get. So there's a video. Go look it up. It's the stick figure guys, and the it shows like the stick figure guy and then his brain, and his brain is like, the deadline has come due, and the guy's like, yes, it has. We are now at the time where the deadline is due, and we have not done the thing. We haven't done the thing. And so what are we going to do? Brain, you know that magic thing you do? Yes, I know of the magic. Can you do the magic thing that makes us do the thing? I will now go into do the thing mode, where we accomplish all of our things immediately before the deadline, because we do this so often and the magic is now ingrained in us. It's like, yes, brain, work. And then his hands go out in front of the keyboard, and he's like, typey, type, 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 type. He's like, yes, brain. And then he's done. And the brain is like, and once again, the magic of doing the thing has won it's hilarious. Oh, but that's the way I've done. It's a very bad thing to have it to get into, but I do that with everything. I'm like, I'm going to build a house. We need plans for this house. And then I show up and like, what are the house plans? Oh, we're going to put a wall there and a wall here and a wall. I mean, when I did house designs, I did do some blueprints, but even then I'd be like, I need blueprints for this house. tomorrow because we're going to build the house tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like, we've already poured the foundation and we had a general, like a rough outline, and then it was, well, you're going to do the specific designs and it needs to meet this criteria. And I get, hey, do we have those blueprints? Do we have that ready? And then I'm like, it's the night before. I'm like, well, let me get out this thing and start drawing.
Yeah.
And that's what we got.
But it works.
Yeah.
You know, it works well for a lot of people. I don't know if it's something subconscious, you know.
Yeah, but some things it doesn't work.
Well, no, not
Like,
everything works.
I'm going to buy stocks or invest in cryptocurrencies at the very last minute.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I think that's just gambling. I don't think that's like actually knowing what you're doing, thoughtfully considering. But I mean, the houses that, so I designed a couple houses for us when I did construction, and like they all turned out great. And like, had I sat and thought about it, there's a good chance I would have overthought it and scratched things out and erased and had to redo it and redo multiple levels. But instead, we're like, oh yeah, here's a house and it's got a catwalk up above that goes to a bonus room above the garage, and you have this nice open floor plan over the living area. I'm like, my boss like, how long? Like, I know we were going to have this a while back, but how long were you working on these? And I'm like, last night. So sometimes it works. So one of the questions that our AI system threw at us was under historical procrastinators. So this one is, what's your take on the idea that some of history's greatest works might have been influenced by procrastination? If you were to humorously speculate, how might Leonardo da Vinci or Edgar Allan Poe have procrastinated on their famous works? So, I mean, that actually, like like I said, we haven't seen these questions. So here, do you think Da Vinci planned out the Sistine Chapel? Or no, who did Da Vinci didn't do? Who?
No, that was Michelangelo.
Michelangelo. Or David? Do you think he?
I think that the chapel was probably somewhat, at least, planned out.
Or is it like, who's the comedian that he's like, who came up with the song from Dora the Explorer about the map? The producers come in and they're like, all right, we need a song. Wanted to check an update to see how it's going. Oh yeah, I got the song. Oh, you got it already? Yep, I got the song already. Oh, well, let's hear it. And the guy's like, what? Okay. You want to hear it right now? Yeah. You said you got it. How's it go? I'm the map, I'm the map, I'm the map, I'm the map, I'm the map. Creative genius right there on the spot. So, I read about like Michelangelo with some of his carving from stone, where a lot of times he didn't know. He would pick out the stone and then start carving, and then he would say, like, I just let the stone speak to me.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever was going to come out of that piece, like it emerged, the stone itself told him what to carve.
Yeah. I don't know if that's procrastination, though.
I'm like, maybe it is, though.
Maybe
They're like, okay, you've had this stone for a couple of months now. What are you going to carve from it? He's like, oh, shoot, crap. I keep playing canasta. I should really be working on this. Oh, okay. It's all right. I got it figured out. The stone. Well, what is it going to be? Look, wait. The stone is going to speak to me and tell me what it's going to be. People are like, oh, that's brilliant. He's like, they bought it. Good. But I should probably get started on this. Tink, tink, tink.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, uh, painting the Michelangelo painting the Sistine Chapel, or Da Vinci painting the Mona Lisa? Was that a crap? Paint this.
I've pulled up. Well, apparently, according to this
Oh,
list I pulled up, Da Vinci was a procrastinator, um,
interesting. So,
as
I
well
mean,
as Mozart. Um,
all those on there. So what did you Google to
it's
find
just
this?
history's top most famous procrastinators.
Yeah, this is an interesting list. You want to read through them?
Yeah, let's go ahead. We've got J.K. Rowling, Bill Clinton, Mozart, the Dalai Lama.
What is the Dalai Lama? What would he procrastinate on?
I don't know.
Okay, honest thing. I've never looked up like what the Dalai Lama does.
I know he's a spiritual figurehead. That's
Yeah, but he's like, ah, dang it. I forgot to I forgot to meditate today, so I don't have an answer for you. So let me just make something up on the spot. Maybe that's have you seen Ace Ventura, Pet Detective Part 2, When Nature Calls? That was Ace's procrastination. But then when they wanted him to get out of there, and he's like, "Oh, you just achieved enlightenment." I did? Yes, just now. So what does it say that the Dalai Lama would do?
it says he
He's
does prayers, meditation, prostrations,
How do you
and
procrastinate?
I don't know.
So after his morning shower, His Holiness begins the day with prayers, meditation, and prostrations until 5 a.m. From 5 a.m., His Holiness takes short morning walk around the premises, and then so he wakes up at 3. I'm like, how do you wake up at 3 in the morning and procrastinate?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. Okay,
But
so some more on our list here of
see,
famous
oops.
procrastinator.
Here we've got, where did that go?
That's over on.
No, this. Um, apparently Mozart procrastinated the overture of Don Giovanni until um,
The night
the
before.
night. Well, no, the morning of,
What?
because the ink was still wet, and there was no no rehearsals before the premiere.
Yeah, can you imagine that? Premiere, the greatest thing. It's all advertised. Mozart's latest thing. What are we doing? I don't know. Did you get any music? No. Well, what? When did we practice this? We didn't. Or what are we supposed to play? We don't know. We don't even have the music yet. Yeah, we're not. I'm not that bad.
No, I think for me, I don't know if it's procrastination, but when I write, I work early mornings, so my days are, I've got lots of things to do around the house and whatnot, but days where I'm like, okay, I'm gonna write today, and I'm home by noon, and it'll be okay. I'm gonna write today. I'm gonna write today.
Yeah,
And 5 o'clock comes around. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna write today,
yeah.
and then I write. I'll get it done that day. Well, maybe not always, but I do in a way procrastinate it. Like, okay, I'm gonna write, and then I'm like, there's nothing in my head at the moment, so I'll come back to it.
Well, that's pretty typical of, or stereotypical of writers in general.
Yeah,
Like there's whole memes and stuff out there of writers being like, "All right, I'm gonna get so many words written today." That's those dishes. I really shouldn't leave those dishes in the sink. Well, while I'm cleaning up the sink, okay, I got the dishes done, and I should go in there and write. But that basket of laundry over there is not going to fold itself.
yeah,
Like all the things that you do not know that you. Some people normally wash the dishes and fold the laundry, but like anything you can think of, like
yeah. Because it's hard to write,
yeah,
and
that
it's
spot on the carpet. I am so sick of it being there. I've been wanting to get rid of that spot for 15 years. I should work on that today. No, you're supposed to write.
yeah. And I guess this goes into another topic ish. why do we procrastinate?
Yeah.
You know, writing, it's daunting to sit down at a blank screen, and even if you know what you're going to write about that day.
Well, that's one of the questions. We haven't gotten that far yet, but we can jump right there. From AI, why do you think the psychology of procrastination? Why do you think people procrastinate, and how can this sometimes lead to creative bursts?
Hmm.
I'm like, that's really that little cartoon that I was talking about. You know, I will now do the thing that makes us.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's literally what your brain does sometimes. It forces, we got to do something.
Yeah. And it, I don't remember what chapter it was. It was one that I wrote on a trip. I was in the car. I wasn't driving. I was passenger. And I'm like, I'm going to write this chapter before I get home. It was long, you know, it was like a 8-hour day in the car.
Yeah.
And um, it ended up being a really good chapter, but I didn't write it until like the
You're like,
last hour of the car ride
yeah.
because I did procrastinate it all through the ride, you know, with other things.
Yeah.
And so it does. Like, I wish I could remember which chapter it was, but
Well, even, I mean, yesterday I went to a baby shower for my niece,
mhm.
and I mean, part of it was again, life is busy, but I'm like, I'm like, we're supposed to do potluck. I have no idea what to make. And then like an hour and a half before we were supposed to leave, I'm like, okay, what do I got? Well, I have this. We have a bunch of frozen corn in the fridge because or in the freezer
Yeah.
because after one of the market days, I got like a couple hundred pounds
Yeah.
of corn on the cob and blanched it, cut it off, put it in the freezer. So it all, condensed down into like 60 pounds of corn. So I got a ton of corn in my freezer right now. And I'm like, wait, I have corn and I have cream cheese. Could do the cream cheese corn, but we don't have enough cream cheese. But what else is good with cream cheese and corn? Curry powder. I'm like, I have golden curry. Can I do curried corn? So then I'm Googling real quick, like curry, and I'm like, oh, curried corn is a thing. People actually make curried corn. So like, all right, curry, corn. What else? I'm like, that's not enough for a good side dish. What else? I have jalapenos. Jalapenos can go in there, and onions. Onions are good with jalapenos, and they work in curry. Throw that in there. Like, what else? Sweet curry. Sweet curry is good, right? People like that. Honey. Let's put some honey in there. And I'm like, it actually turned out pretty good. But just on the spot yesterday. And I'm like, curry corn. It's a thing now.
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, well, the other problem with it is I'm like, I brought this big thing of curried corn, and it turned because of the volume of the sauce that I made. I thought it would thicken a little bit more, so it
Hmm.
turned into like
Curry
a
soup.
curry soup. And then I got there, and I'm like, no bowls.
Oh, nice.
Like, well, I guess procrastination paid off on the creativity side. Too bad nobody can eat it. We don't have any bowls. Ah. But yeah, it's an interesting question. I used to say, and I still say it sometimes, why put off till tomorrow what you can put off till next week? So like the saying usually goes, why put off till tomorrow what you can do today? And I'm like, why put off till tomorrow what I can put off till next week or next month or even later? And then you get to the point, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, when she's like, you must wash up before dinner. Like, but we have washed up. Well, when? Well, just last week, last month, recently. Like, that's how it feels. Oh. So what do you got there, Jared?
Well,
What's your
I looked up, why does procrastination create good work? And one of the things it came up with is it increases motivation.
yeah?
And Yeah.
Well, I wonder though, like, I mean, there is real evidence that procrastination can produce tremendous results when people do things. But I wonder, could the result, like, what would the results have been had procrastination not happened?
Well,
And I'm like, that's the
one thing,
dichotomy.
when we don't procrastinate, when we plot and plan, and um, there's a chance of becoming lackadaisical over what you're doing.
Yeah,
Whereas if you procrastinate till the last minute, there's a real focus in your brain
yeah,
as to, I can't think about anything else. I can't, this is what I have to do right now.
yeah. And I think maybe there's a balance there. So one of the um, a phrase that I heard a long time ago was, no one, there is no one who will ever always be motivated. So you can't always be motivated,
Yeah.
but you can always be disciplined. So I'm like, your initial feelings of motivation are what drives, I'm going to accomplish this. I'm motivated. I want to put this down. I want to create this goal. I want to do this at this time. Um, you feel all motivated to do it. I'm going to work out every day. And then 5 o'clock rolls around and you're like, I'm going to work out every day except today because I'm too comfy in my bed today. Or Jim Gaffigan when he's talking about going to the gym and he's like, the first day you wake up, well, maybe not every day. Like, you got to ease into these things. You can't start out. You can't just dive in. So the next day, well, maybe not every day. Maybe I'll wait. I'll give myself another day. It's okay. And then the third day, you're like, yeah, I'm not working out.
Yeah. Yeah, that is one negative to procrastination, is if there isn't an actual deadline, if you're just putting something off, the longer you go, the less likely you probably are to do something.
Yeah,
Um,
but I think the reason, like you were saying, the reason procrastination can produce good results is because, depending on the situation, depending on if there's a deadline or some key element that you have to meet,
mhm.
some requirement, when you're pushing up against whatever that requirement is, that is the motivation that can drive some piece of your brain to be creative and come up with a solution. It's kind of like, I would compare it to like fight or flight.
Yeah.
You're backed into a corner and you're going to escape or die. you know, you're gonna you're either gonna fight, you're gonna run away, or you're gonna have to die to stop. You're gonna have to kill me to stop me. That's kind of what procrastination is. It is making you are now the rat in the corner. So you have to figure out a way to survive. I think the key is, from a non-procrastination perspective, one is, if you can find elements of motivation early and retain, you won't be able to retain motivation all the time. But like I said, you can retain discipline. That's one of the things Timothy McGowan, when he was on here, he talked about his writing habits, where he's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether I'm feeling creative or not feeling creative. Get words on the page. And it's, I write from this time to this time, and I write this many words, a minimum. This is how my word count I must write every day. Or we talked about with Stephen King, how he does the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm going to write this much every day. So I think discipline is not motivation, but discipline is uh, the medicine to cure procrastination. But then the question is, are you motivated to get disciplined? How long can you procrastinate being disciplined?
Yeah. A long time.
Yeah. So some of the little ideas that the AI came up, some potential topics or drivers of or examples of things that drive motivation or drive creativity that are part of procrastination are like, what are things that you do while you're procrastinating? One of them is you doodle.
Yeah.
Doodling on a page. How many times, how many people listening to the podcast, if you're listening to the podcast, did you ever have a homework assignment or something you were supposed to do in class? And instead of doing that in class, you have a page filled with different block ways of writing your name or random pictures of potential superhero outfits. Or if you were a little bit more on the destructive side, how deeply were different forms of your block name carved into the surface of the desk where you sat, etched into school history for anyone who came and experienced that desk after you left. That's a creative outlet, right?
Yeah.
Creates that procrastination, creates just by the intrinsic nature of procrastination can cause creativity. Because it may not be something creative you're procrastinating against. It might be something terrible
Yeah. Well, I would say more often than not,
or boring.
it's something that's tedious
Yeah,
or scary.
yeah. I'd say
Tedium.
tedious and maybe overwhelming.
Yeah.
Those are the two. I think those are the two big things I would say for me are procrastination
Yeah.
events.
Tedium is probably the biggest one.
Yeah, tedium or a sense of being overwhelmed. And then in the meantime, you don't want to do the tedious task, and you want to be distracted from being overwhelmed.
So you do something else tedious.
So you create fan art, or you do fill an entire page of a notebook with dots.
Never done that.
I'm like, that's not tedious at all.
Yeah.
They got to be perfectly spaced. Can I fill this whole page with dots that are equally spaced apart? And how many dots, how many rows and columns of dots can I make? And then can you split those into more rows and columns? All kinds of stuff like that are driven, random creative stuff driven by procrastination. Yeah. Procrastination drives a lot of people's lives.
Yeah. And I mean, there are studies out there about strategic procrastination. Doing it on purpose.
Is that really procrastination, though? If you're planning, if you're like, all right, I have 10 days to do this project, and I'm going to draw dots on a paper, do bubble art of my name, come up with superheroes, clean and wax the floor, scrub and re-wax my wood floor, and on day 9 3/4, then I'm going to write this.
Yeah, I don't know I don't know. I don't know how that works as far as, if that qualifies as procrastination or not.
But if it's planned procrastination, that would be the equivalent in my mind. I'm curious what that means, like a study of planned procrastination. Whereas, is that the equivalent of, I've got all this work to do. I know it all needs to be done. I've got 10 days to do it, but I'm going to take I'm going to go on vacation for 8 days. And then I'll do all the work that needs to be done over 10 days in 2.
Apparently there are strategies.
But again, I'm like, if you're strategizing procrastination, is that procrastination?
Well, here it says tricking yourself into feeling a sense of urgency while still allowing time.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't either.
I'm like, can I trick myself into enjoying the smell of skunk so that when I live out in the country and when I drive past one that has sprayed something, I'm not like, oh gosh, it's terrible.
Well, yeah, you can do that. Maybe not with smell. I don't know about with smell, but with taste, you can definitely do that. you can be like, I'm going to, because like with alcohol, say, for example,
Yeah.
I'm going to pretend I like this because I like the effects of this. And eventually
Yeah, but
you do like
I
them.
guess
Like
you do.
with beer, it's an acquired taste.
You can like the effects of procrastination, so I could see you don't like the effects of skunk spray.
No,
I don't know anybody that
no,
likes
I
the
can't say
effects of
that one.
skunk spray. Well, maybe because maybe if you're like, I like the effects of weed, but I hate the smell, so I'm gonna follow skunks around and be like, if I smell this, then it won't bother me when I'm. Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that doesn't work the same way.
I don't think the psychology is quite the same on that one.
No. So here's a question. If you were to challenge yourself to procrastinate creatively for a day, what would that look like? So that's one of the questions from the AI that kind of goes along with planned procrastination. So what kind of creative outcomes do you think could arise from productive avoidance?
Hmm.
How might you force yourself to procrastinate? Well, it's kind of like what we were talking about earlier, where sometimes if you're trying to write and you're like, oh, I'm trying and trying and trying and I can't come up with anything creative. So maybe something, maybe Timothy McGowan and even um, Stephen King have something to that. If you say, I have to write, I have to write 4,000 words a day. It's about a chapter.
Mm-hmm.
So I must write 4,000 words a day, but I have to go to bed by 10 o'clock. Like you have something you have to get up for every day or something. Like I'm meeting somebody at the gym. I have to go to the gym at this time every day. You're like, no matter what, I have to write 4,000 words a day, but I have to go to bed at 10. And if your day to day job is like you're a writer, you're an author, you don't have another job you have to go to. But if you're like, I got to go to bed at 10 and I'm going to sit down at 8 o'clock, be like, I haven't written a single word, but I cannot go to bed until I write 4,000 words.
I think that might come into play with forced forced creativity because people have a tendency to overthink.
Oh, yeah.
And when you force yourself into a quick deadline, say I've got to write 4,000 words today, you're going to put on the page what comes to your brain first.
Yeah.
And so, it's kind of like that old with the test, go with your first, go with what,
Yeah.
like on a
Go with your first
multiple,
instinct.
yeah,
Yeah.
like on a multiple choice test, go with your first instinct, and it's probably right. Maybe it comes into that with like writing, write what comes first, and then you're not overthinking or no, I don't like that.
Yeah.
Throw that out, and that may have been what was best.
Yeah. There is, so that just made me think of, there's a Jimmy Stewart movie called Pot of Gold. And it's a really fun movie. It's an old black and white movie. Jimmy Stewart runs a little music shop, and it's a failing music shop. But he has a very wealthy uncle, and Jimmy Stewart's father's dead. This guy didn't have any kids. Jimmy Stewart is like uh, the last of this guy's line. And so his uncle shows up and is like, hey, you're going to come. I want you to come and take over my business because I'm getting old and you need to learn it. And I want to leave everything, all my money and everything to you. Um, well, the guy also, he hosts a radio show and it's kind of quirky and people think it's kind of weird and stuff, but the old man's kind of quirky anyway. And somebody comes up with or somebody announces on air to try to get back at Jimmy Stewart for a slight. They get on the radio show and they announce live on the air that when Jimmy Stewart is on the show that they're going to give away $1,000 every week on the radio show. Well, now because they announced it, like the laws at that time, they're legally obligated to do it, but it can't be a lottery. There's laws against lotteries and stuff like that, and they're fretting and trying to figure out what to do. And Jimmy Stewart's like, well, I got like an hour. And if I don't do this on the show, I'll be in violation of like FEC laws and stuff like that. And I'm going to go to jail because somebody did this. And he bumps into an old grandfather clock, and the hands are like, good on it, spinning, and it's like cuckoo, cuckoo, going crazy. And then he's like, that's it. And they rush, and they end up using like a big spinning wheel and picking names out of a phone book based on numbers on this wheel. But it's literally like the hour before the show is going on the air.
Mm-hmm.
And they just scramble and put all this big jerry-rigged setup all together to get and I'm like, they came up with this amazing creative idea that solved all the problems, and they have been thinking about it for like a week with nothing.
Yeah.
But it was, stuff like that, like you come up with, it can be like he was facing the last minute, gonna go to jail, lose everything, all the stuff, and it just pushed so hard against that limit, and all of a sudden it's like, eureka! The idea just bam, right into his brain. After a week of fretting and stressing and everything, it was that last minute, like Elder Na said, if it wasn't for the last minute, many things would never be done. And maybe creativity is the reason why. Forced creativity is the reason why. Partially. And laziness. So, take that. If you're a procrastinator, welcome to the club. You're just creative. You're just exceptionally, spontaneously creative. That's what you can call yourself from now on. You are forcing creativity upon yourself. Whether it's wait till the last minute to cook dinner, wait till the last minute to complete that assignment, wait till the last minute to turn something into your boss. Like, no, I wanted to force myself to be as creative as possible in making these hot dogs.
Yeah. All right.
So take that, run with it, and just remember, or run with that assigned convention for yourself. You're not a procrastinator. You are a forced creator. You're trying to be as creative as you can. So take that procrastination and go create something good. Thanks for joining us today. And until next time, go in good spirits. Thanks for listening to the Creators Guild podcast. Don't forget to get your copy of A Flight from Shadows, available on Amazon. While you're there, please rate it and give it a review. If you like the Creators Guild, please like and subscribe, and make sure to share it with your friends. Until next time, go in good spirits.